The night sky above the Arctic tundra glowed with an eerie blue shimmer, a wavering veil of auroras dancing in silence over a frozen world untouched by time. Beneath the endless field of snow and ice, far from any satellite or signal, something ancient stirred, a presence that had waited, undisturbed, for longer than humanity had drawn breath. Commander Alara Miles had not come from myths. She was a climatologist and exobiology liaison with the European Space Agency, dispatched as part of an international research coalition to study accelerated ice melt patterns in the southern polar regions. Yet even she couldn't deny the oddity of what they'd uncovered, an oblong heat signature beneath for kilometers of solid ice, radiating just enough thermal irregularity to confound all natural explanations. She tightened her parka and stared across the base's narrow communication chamber, eyes fixed on a scrambled radar readout. Her team's signals to the buried anomaly had bounced back faster than light should allow, warped, reversed, like echoes from a different kind of space. The technician beside her, a young Swede named Tom Berglund, rubbed his temples, mumbling about phase anomalies and magnetometric spikes. She knew the science well enough to know none of it made sense. "I want visuals," Alara ordered. "We're still 2 days from breaching the chamber," Tom replied, but she was already reaching for the headset. "Then patch me through to Owens at Drill Site B. I need an update now." There was static, then a voice, garbled at first, but increasingly clear. "Commander, the shaft collapsed. We lost 2 drones. And the pressure sensors. Commander, it's hollowed down here. Not ice, not rock. Hollow." Her breath caught. She turned from the monitors, her fingers clenching unconsciously. If it was a cave, it was massive, unnatural. If it was something else, she dismissed the thought before it formed. No room for fantasies. But deep down, beneath the practiced attachment of the scientist, her gut twisted. It felt wrong. They were not alone at Camp Vostara. Her team was not the only one sent to investigate the anomaly. Days earlier, a private Russian delegation had arrived unannounced. Alara recognized their insignias from declassified Cold War files, symbols belonging not to any conventional scientific institution, but to units once tasked with anomalous containment and deep cryoarchaeology. Among them was Dr. Vasily Markov, a pale, hawk-eyed man with a disarming calm. He carried no computer, no instrument, only a leather-bound journal whose language none could decipher. At dinners, he spoke rarely. When he did, his voice was steady, strangely devoid of emotion, yet always unnervingly accurate. "You don't believe what lies beneath the ice is dead." Alara had challenged him one evening, wine warming her boldness. "I believe," Markov replied evenly, "that it has waited." She hadn't slept well since. The next morning, Alara descended to the borehole site herself. The wind screamed over the frozen landscape, fine snow cutting against her cheeks like powdered glass. Her boots crunched across the packed trail, passing crates marked with warning symbols she'd never seen before. Her own team's equipment looked like children's toys in comparison. Inside the shaft tunnel, the air grew warmer, unnaturally so. The anomaly had caused this, melting the ice from within. Thin veins of blackened frost etched the walls, as if scorched by heat too precise for fire. Her gloved hand brushed one and recoiled at the faint vibration, like touching the skin of something sleeping. Further below, Owens met her with a flashlight and pale eyes. "It's no cave," he said without preamble. "It's constructed. These walls," he swept the light across an exposed panel, "they're not carved. They're fused. Synthetic but not metallic. Some sort of composite." "How old?" He hesitated. "Pre-Ice Age. Maybe older. Our carbon readings are failing." Alara felt her world narrowing. "Show me." They led her into the chamber that shouldn't exist, a dome wide as a cathedral and buried beneath miles of ice. The air buzzed faintly, like an engine idling in a distant room. At its center stood a structure, tall, obelisk-shaped, faceted like crystal yet solid as stone. Symbols marked its surface, shapes like stars, spirals, and long-forgotten constellations. Alara approached it, heart thudding. It gave off no heat, no signal. But standing before it, she felt it watching. Markov arrived minutes later, descending silently as if drawn by intuition alone. His eyes did not widen at the sight. Instead, he knelt beside the obelisk, opened his journal, and turned to a page that bore the same symbols now in front of them. "You knew," Elara whispered. "You knew this was here." "I knew something was," he replied. "My grandfather died, tried to warn us. He worked in Siberian dig sites. Before the collapse, he said they were not temples, but warnings. He said something fell from the sky long ago, when the world was still molten and wild. Not all of it left. You believe this is alien?" Markov tilted his head. "I believe it is not ours." That night, Elara recorded her findings in a private log, encrypted and unlinked from the base systems. She wrote the structure, the vibrations, the language, the feeling of being seen. She didn't know who would read it someday, or if she would survive to explain it. 2 days later, the obelisk began to change. They noticed at first in the recordings. The surface pattern shifted subtly over hours, like a puzzle solving itself in slow motion. Then the instruments began to fail. Battery drains, memory wipes, thermal spikes that threatened to rupture the containment field around the chamber. And then it began to hum, low, like a whale song buried in ocean pressure. At first they thought it was mechanical, but Markov, his face pale, disagreed. "It's not a machine," he said. "It's a signal." "To whom?" Elara asked. Markov looked at her with something close to pity. "To them. To the ones who left it here." In the days that followed, the camp changed. Radio contact with the outside world grew patchy. GPS drifted. Half the team grew sick with symptoms no known virus could explain. Night sweats, hallucinations, nosebleeds, irrational fear. One researcher swore he saw lights moving beneath the ice, parallel to the tunnels. Another walked into the white void one morning and never returned. Through it all, the obelisk thrummed steadily, louder now, more awake. Elara stood at the chamber's threshold as snow filtered through the fractured ceiling, and asked herself a question she had buried deep for weeks. What if it was never meant to be found? What if the ice had been hiding something not just ancient, but imprisoned? Behind her, Markov whispered a phrase from his journal, in a language lost to the modern world. The obelisk pulsed once, faint and blue. Elara's blood ran cold. Above them, the wind screamed louder. Below them, the ice cracked. And somewhere far off, beyond satellites and sonar, something vast turned its attention back to Earth. And it remembered. The ice cracked again. It wasn't the sound of ordinary glacial movement. Elara knew the difference. This was deliberate, rhythmic, as if something deep beneath them was testing the world above, probing the layers of time and pressure that had kept it buried. She stood outside the central dome of Camp Ostara, her breath visible in the thin air, her eyes fixed on the trembling borehole tower. The wind screamed overhead, but below, everything was quiet, too quiet. Inside the research tent, Tom was hunched over the seismic monitor, his fingers twitching with every data flicker. "It's not tectonic," he muttered, barely looking up. "And it's not thermal stress either. This feels directional." "Meaning?" Elara asked, removing her gloves. "Meaning it's coming from the structure, from the obelisk. It's not passive anymore." Elara's jaw tightened. She thought about the night before, about the hum that had changed pitch, deeper, closer. She had felt it inside her chest, as if it bypassed her ears and reached straight into her bones. She hadn't told anyone yet, but it had spoken, not in words, not in any language. It had impressed a thought upon her, a simple and incomprehensible truth. We are not the first. She wanted to dismiss it, to chalk it up to stress or fatigue or high-altitude hypoxia. But then came the dreams. They started with vague images, spirals in the snow, flickers of starlight, immense shadows suspended in impossible geometry. Then faces. Not human, not exactly. Elongated, angular, always watching. She woke gasping, sheets soaked, fingers clenched into fists she didn't remember forming. And she wasn't alone. Others were having them too. Dr. Lang, the team's glaciologist, had broken down over breakfast, shaking and pale. "It showed me cities," he said, beneath oceans of ice, alive but silent, waiting, not ruined, not dead, waiting. By mid-afternoon, 3 members of the team had locked themselves in the medical bay. Markov sat among them, silent, unreadable. He didn't comfort them. He only observed. And then he asked Alara to follow him. He led her to the deeper chamber, the one beneath the main obelisk room, where excavation had exposed more of the subterranean complex. The air down here was different. Thicker, not just with moisture, but memory, like the stone remembered being buried and resented being disturbed. Lights flickered as they entered a corridor lined with strange markings. Not just glyphs, but etchings in the walls that shimmered when touched. They pulsed faintly beneath Alara's fingertips, reactions, not echoes. Markov's voice broke the silence. They changed the ice. She turned toward him, frowning. Who did? He looked at her like a teacher, to a student too close to the truth. The ones who built this. They used it, not as prison walls, not as camouflage, as containment. The ice isn't just here to hide it. It was designed to keep it from waking up. Alara's breath caught. You think this, whatever this is alive? Markov shook his head slowly. I think it was never truly dead. She stepped forward. They'd reached the end of the corridor now, and there, half buried in frost, lay a massive archway. Unlike the obelisk, it wasn't intact. It had been broken, shattered outward, not inward, from the inside. It escaped, she whispered. Markov nodded. Or was released. Alara's mind reeled, tumbling through layers of science and speculation, trying to stitch meaning into the impossible. Why would they bury something like this? Why not destroy it? Perhaps they couldn't, Markov said. Or perhaps they were not permitted. A tremor passed beneath their feet then, not violent but steady, measured, a heartbeat. Alara gripped the wall for balance, and the wall responded, its shimmer pulsing faster. The symbols lit up in succession, crawling down the corridor like veins feeding something enormous. Back at the surface, alarms wailed. By the time they returned to the control center, chaos had broken open. The obelisk chamber's monitoring equipment was failing in waves, cascading through the network. A breach alert triggered in the lower vaults. Ice containment failure. A technician screamed that the geothermal pressure was rising unnaturally, as if heat was bleeding up through layers that had been frozen for millions of years. Lang had collapsed again. This time, he wasn't breathing. Alara dropped to her knees beside him, checked his pulse, irregular, faint. His pupils were dilated. He was whispering something. Beneath the sky, before light, not dead, just buried. She turned to Tom. Prep the medevac. We're pulling the non-essential team out. Now! We won't be able to fly if this keeps up, he replied grimly. Markov stood behind him, arms crossed, unmoving. You won't get far, he said. If it's awakening, it may not allow anything to leave. Then help me stop it. Alara snapped. You've known about this longer than any of us. If there's something we can do. There is nothing to stop, he replied. This isn't a weapon. This is history. And history is inevitable. She stared at him. You want this to happen? I want the truth, he said, eyes calm. And the truth has never cared what we want. That night, Alara stood alone in the observation tower, staring out across the ice. Something shimmered on the horizon, barely visible. A light, faint and pulsing, like the breath of a city submerged under time. She pressed her palm to the glass, unsure if what she saw was real. Then she heard the whisper again, not from outside, but from within. Not words, memories, someone else's. She saw an ocean without stars, a ship descending not by technology, but by intention. She saw hands, elongated, luminous, pressing stones into the earth, seeding it not with life, but with warning. She saw the obelisk, a signal, a gate, a boundary, and she saw that boundary breaking. In the morning, the temperature rose 6 degrees in under 3 hours. The ice, stable for eons, cracked open along a 12-mile fault line. The dome shuddered. Instruments failed. Outside, the snow had begun to melt. Melt not from above, but from within. Steam coiled up from the fissures. She met Markov on the eastern ridge. His journal was open again, pages fluttering. He looked younger now, almost serene. "I understand now," he said. "It's not just a structure. It's a memory palace. It stores not data, but presence." Ilera looked at the boiling ice. "So what happens now?" Markov smiled faintly. Now we remember." Then the sky changed. A ring of dark light bloomed above the horizon, warping clouds and atmosphere like heat over metal. It pulsed once and again, rhythmic, deliberate. A call. The obelisk responded, its blue glow intensifying. Lights flowed from its base like liquid electricity, carving new patterns into the ground. Geometry rewrote itself beneath their feet. Ilera turned to run. Behind her, the ice shattered. The storm didn't begin with wind or snow. It began with silence, total, suffocating, unnatural. Ilera felt it press against her chest as she sprinted to the collapsing corridor. Lights stuttering overhead, walls hissing with steam as one solid ice wept away in sheets. Behind her, the ground ruptured. A jagged seam of obsidian light tore through the floor of the dome, splitting it like a cracked shell. What had slept beneath was no longer dormant. She emerged onto the surface, gasping, boots sinking into slush where once there had been ice packed like stone. The horizon flickered. Reality itself shimmered as if caught between temperatures, as though the laws of physics were negotiating new terms. The sky overhead pulsed with concentric rings of darkened light, and the auroras, once tranquil, now moved with unnatural purpose, spiraling toward a point directly above the obelisk. Tom met her near the east scaffold, his parka soaked, eyes wide with terror. "Evacs offline. No response from comms. It's like the satellites just stopped existing." "They didn't stop," Ilera said, voice low. "They were disconnected." She scanned the camp, structures half submerged in slush, antennae melting like wax. And beyond the wreckage, in the crater where the obelisk once stood, there now loomed something taller, alive, shifting. Markov stood alone at its base, arms outstretched. He wasn't praying. He was listening. The obelisk had transformed, stretching upward like a stalk of dark crystal, spinning slowly, its facets refracting images that couldn't exist. Stars not in their sky, constellations twisted into unfamiliar arrangements, flashes of architecture impossible in 3 dimensions. One by one, the crew members that remained stumbled into view, drawn toward the structure like moths to fire. They moved slowly, glass-eyed, mouths slightly open, dreamers in waking flesh. "What's it doing to them?" Tom whispered. "It's not doing," Ilera murmured. "It's showing." Lang was among them. He reached the base of the structure and knelt, trembling. His skin glowed faintly in the low light. Ilera could see veins beneath his cheeks, moving like silver threads beneath parchment. Something was rewriting him. She stepped forward, but Tom grabbed her arm. "Don't. You don't know what it'll do." "I don't think it wants to harm us," she said. "I think it's trying to communicate." But her voice lacked certainty, because in her bones, where instinct overruled logic, something deeper whispered. "It doesn't care if it harms us. We are not its audience. We are its environment." A fresh tremor rippled outward. The ice fissured again, but this time the cracks formed patterns, perfect symmetry, concentric hexagons, spreading across the ground like living geometry. Beneath the surface, something massive moved, but not with the sluggish heaviness of tectonics. It moved with coordination, intention. "Ilera," Tom said, pointing to the sky. Above, the concentric rings of light converged into a single point of darkness. It was not a void, but an eye, unblinking, vast, and utterly alien. From it descended a shaft of luminescence so dense it seemed solid, striking the crystal structure and locking into place with a thunderous tone that vibrated through flesh and stone alike. Ilera dropped to one knee, clutching her head as images flooded her mind, fragments of ancient memory, not her own. She saw a world before ice, before Earth was Earth, a world seeded by those who shaped stars, who bent gravity like clay and carved thought into matter. They had come not as gods, but as gardeners, and what they planted here was not life, but custody. The obelisk had not been a beacon nor a prison. It was a marker, a key, and someone, somewhere had just turned it. Markov approached them now, his eyes lit with inner fire. "They've heard the call," he said. "They're returning." Ilara stood. "Who are they?" He looked at her with something approaching reverence. "The architects, the true inheritors of the system. We were only ever the interval between their breaths." The madness in his voice chilled her more than the wind. He believed it, all of it, that humanity had been a pause, a placeholder, a colony of unintentional consequence. Tom took a step back. "We have to leave. Now. We can't stop it, but we can get out, warn someone." Ilara looked to the east, where the ice had fully collapsed into a massive circular depression. There, rising from the depths, was the impossible, a structure the size of a city, half submerged in glacial slush, etched with the same pulsing glyphs. It hadn't landed. It had risen, dormant beneath the ice for eons, waiting for the signal. Its shape was angular, both machine and organism, its surface undulating in ways no human eye could fully follow. Whatever it was, it had been built, but not by human hands. And it wasn't alone. 3 more similar shapes broke the surface in slow succession, surrounding the obelisk like sentinels awakening from hibernation. Energy flowed between them, dancing arcs of dark blue lightning. The camp around Ilara cracked and fell apart, overwhelmed by the raw gravitational warping now pulsing from the ground. Then came the sound. Low, harmonic, layered like a choir of collapsing stars. Not noise, not even language. A signal of ownership. Markov was weeping. "They've returned to reclaim what was theirs," he whispered. Tom turned to Ilara, desperation carved into his face. "We have to fight it." Ilara shook her head, eyes locked on the titanic structure unfolding before them. "Fight what? This is an invasion. It's a restoration." "But what happens to us?" he asked. She looked at the others, her team, kneeling in worship or catatonia. The transformation had begun. Whether physical, mental, or metaphysical, she couldn't say, but it was irreversible. The presence behind the obelisk wasn't asking for consent. It was rewriting the environment to suit its return. They had been the anomaly all along. "We were never meant to survive this," she said. A soft hum filled the air. The ground stabilized. The sky cleared. And for one long, terrifying moment, everything was still. The massive structure stopped moving, standing in silent communion. Then the central one, the first to rise, split open vertically, revealing a dark, luminous interior filled with motion. Not mechanical, not organic, conceptual. Light moved like thoughts. Form bled into function. From within, something stepped out. It was not a body, but manifestation, a bipedal silhouette of light and memory, surrounded by radiating energy. It had no face, but she felt its gaze. It walked toward them slowly, not in menace, but in acknowledgement, recognition. Ilara stepped forward. She could barely stand, but she met its gaze and whispered the only question that still mattered. "Why now?" The figure stopped. A sound formed, not from its mouth, but from the world itself. One word, spoken not in language, but in meaning. "Threshold." Then it raised its hand. The obelisk cracked. Blue light erupted upward, straight into the sky, and the eye above opened wider. And through it, something began to descend. Ilara could no longer feel the cold. Around her, the world unraveled like a coiled scroll, its edges curling into brilliance. The descending object, a vessel, if it could even be called that, was impossibly vast. It didn't fall through the sky. It replaced it. Where clouds had once wandered, now hovered a cathedral of shifting contours, its surface neither metal nor matter, but some state of presence that bent perception. Tom stood beside her, silent, eyes fixed upward, fists clenched as if resisting the urge to reach for a weapon that wouldn't have mattered. Beside them, Markov knelt on the soaked tundra, his hands outstretched, his face wet with tears of awe. The others, the survivors, were motionless. Some prayed, some stared, some wept, but none moved. The will to act had been crushed beneath the weight of revelation. The figure, The emissary watched them, not passively, evaluating. It approached Ilara, its form shimmering with shifting complexity, a figure carved from sentient memory. With each step, the air grew thicker, filled with vibrations too deep for hearing, too high for thought. When it finally stood before her, Ilara felt her body go weightless, not physically, but existentially. She felt transparent, known. It reached toward her, fingers splayed, not touching, merely indicating. An invitation, or a test. She hesitated, then stepped forward. Contact was not physical. It was cognitive. Her mind reeled as she fell, not through space, but through context. Her thoughts dissolved into memory not her own, her sense of self folding into a collective archive older than stars. She glimpsed it all in fragments. The shaping of the moon as an anchor, the crafting of ice as a failsafe, the seeding of neural code into species bound to evolve in echoes of their makers. She saw wars, vast, elemental conflicts that had scarred galaxies and reset civilizations like fire through a forest. But Earth had been left untouched, reserved, not sacred, experimental. Her identity screamed to hold form. And something responded. The figure withdrew. Ilara gasped, knees buckling, falling back into herself like a wave retreating from shore. Tom caught her. "What happened?" he demanded. "What did it do?" Ilara looked up at the figure, whose form was now flickering, slowing. "It asked a question," she whispered. "What question?" "If we were ready." Tom shook his head, brow furrowed. "Ready for what?" "To be part of what comes next." The sky shifted again. The vessel above emitted a low, harmonious chord, an exhalation of decision. For within its structure, beams of soft, oscillating light descended, striking the four risen towers. Each began to hum, their tones blending into a resonant lattice that enveloped the camp. Snow lifted from the ground, suspended mid-air in gravity-defying stillness. Time seemed to ripple. Then came the vision, not a hallucination, but a shared broadcast, projected across every mind in the lattice. Ilara stood within it again, though her body remained rooted in place. She was among stars now, Earth behind her, spinning blue and defiant. She saw other worlds, burned, reborn, reformed. She saw life in infinite forms, serpentine creatures of liquid plasma, vast organisms the size of cities, hive minds woven through crystal forests. And in each world one truth remained. They had all been visited. The architects, it seemed, did not destroy. They repurposed. They elevated. But only those who had passed the threshold. The vision shifted. Earth appeared again, seen from within its crust, layers peeling back like an onion. Ilara saw the cities of ice hidden beneath Antarctica, sleeping vessels camouflaged within ancient tectonic scars, monoliths beneath oceans, engines beneath deserts. Each site, like Vastara, had been a node, a checkpoint, a proving ground. This was the last. She staggered as the vision ended, her breath ragged, limbs trembling. Around her, the others stirred, blinking as if surfacing from deep water. "Why show us this?" Tom asked. Ilara looked at the emissary. "Because now we know, now we remember, and choice only exists when knowledge is complete." Markov rose to his feet, his face transformed, not with madness, but with purpose. "This isn't a visitation," he said. "It's inheritance. They're offering us ascension, to be folded into something greater. They're offering extinction." Tom snapped. "We lose everything we are, everything we've made." "Do you really believe that?" Markov said softly. "Or are you just afraid?" Ilara stepped between them. "It's not binary. This isn't conquest or surrender. It's a test. And not for all of us, only the ones who can choose." The emissary stepped back. The vessel pulsed, and then a rift opened in the sky, not tearing, but inviting. A corridor of light, folding upward like the lit reality itself. Within it, stars unlike any mapped, colors never named, a road to somewhere utterly other. Ilara looked at Tom. "We can't stop it," she said, "but maybe we can define what it becomes." He swallowed hard. "And if we fail?" "We don't. We evolve. One by one, The survivors moved. Some approached the light. Others turned away, walking into the wilderness, rejecting what they could not accept. Markov vanished into the brilliance without hesitation. Tom held Alara's hand. "You going?" She looked up, eyes burning with uncertainty and hope. "I think we already started going," she said. And then, together, they stepped forward,